Good evening. Look forward to providing a little bit of information about a project BR-20-B1, which is on 7th Avenue North from Broadway to Elm Street. So tonight, just a brief agenda. We'll do a brief staff introduction, give some overview of the project, talk briefly about special assessments, and then have an opportunity for questions. So here with the City of Fargo tonight, we have Rick Larson, our project manager, Doug Durgan with special assessments, and myself, Tom Nachman, was the assistant city engineer. With more engineering tonight, we have Eric Gilbertson and Tracy Esslinger. So the City of Fargo will do the project management and the inspection on this project, but it was designed by More Engineering. And so Tracy and Eric can provide any other information that we need tonight. So again, project location, it's on 7th Avenue North from Broadway through 2nd Street. There's a portion that we reconstructed previously, but then we kind of skip over 2nd Street and go all the way to Elm. The western portion will be reconstructed in concrete, and the eastern portion will be asphalt. So just a little bit more information about the project. It is a full roadway reconstruction. So we'll reconstruct the roadway and then also the water main, water services from the main to the curb stop valve. Sanitary sewer main, we are doing some spot repairs on that. We will replace sanitary sewer services from the main to about 5 feet behind the back of curb, and then also doing storm sewer inlets and leads. Again, as part of the reconstruction, we will reconstruct driveway approaches. We will do sidewalk replacement in a number of areas throughout the project. We'll also rehab the street lights from Broadway to 4th Street. We will replace the traffic signal at Broadway and at 4th Street. And then we'll also install what's called a Hawk pedestrian signal at the 5th Street pedestrian crossing. So a little bit more information about a Hawk. If you haven't used those before, we do have a number of them throughout town. It's really to help pedestrians cross the roadway. So typical to a traffic signal, a pedestrian's gonna go up, push the button for a walk. And then the drivers will see the lights either start flashing yellow or go to solid or solid red and then start flashing again. So they're pretty intuitive once you have used it. A little bit about project timing. Bid date is March 18th. Start date, we don't know when that will be for sure, but it's likely in May of 2020. Once we do have a contractor selected for the project, we'll provide a little bit more information to the public as far as when the project will start. And then completion is set for the late part of September of this year. So we do have a number of phases on the project. It's ultimately just to try to limit the impact to residents and the traffic, traveling public that go through this corridor. So total for phase 1, which is Broadway up to the halfway point between 3rd Street and 2nd Street, the contractor will have 110 days to do all of that work. The intersection of Broadway and the intersection of 4th Street are their own smaller phases, sub-phases, and the contractor will have 42 days at each one of those phases, and then they must keep either Broadway or 4th Street open at all times. On the eastern side of the project, phase 2, the contractor will have about 30 days to do that, and that phase goes from the mid-block between 2nd Street and 1st Street up to Oak Street, not including the intersection of Oak Street. And then phase 3 is the intersection of Oak Street going east over to Elm Street. The contractor will have 30 days to do that. And then there's just a small amount of work in the intersection of Elm Street, so they will be constrained to 7 days for that work. A little bit more detail about the project. So we will maintain access on at least one side of the block at all times, and temporary water service will be installed along the project to maintain water service. Driveways may be widened if it complies with city ordinance, and we have forms available tonight if anyone needs one of those. We will install a few new trees along the corridor. And then just like to remind people that boulevards will be regraded and seeded, and then once those are established to about 70%, it does become the property owner's responsibility to maintain it at that point. Just touched briefly on temporary water, just like to give people an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about that. So the yellow pipe that kind of runs parallel to the sidewalk is the temporary water main, and then you can kind of see the black pipe that goes up to the building in this picture, and that's what ultimately provides a service on the temporary basis for the properties along the corridor. So project cost, the estimated cost of construction is just under $3 million. There are some fees and contingencies that get added to the project. So with those, it brings it to about $3.9 million. And here's how that project will be funded. So of that $3.9 million, about $100,000 will be attributed to wastewater. About $456,000 is water. State funds will fund about $2.1 million, and then special assessments pay for the remaining balance of about $1.2 million. So on this project, about 32% of the project cost is special assessed. So going into a little bit more detail again on the special assessments. So the water main, which includes the water service, that's capped at $40 per front foot. On this project, there will be no special assessment for the sanitary sewer service replacement, storm sewer replacement, or street lights. And then the roadway itself, 7th Avenue, portion of it is considered an arterial roadway, which has what we call an arterial band, which is just a wider assessment district. So for this one, it goes up to 10th Avenue North and then down to 4th Avenue. And so then there's two different types of assessments when we talk about the roadway assessment. We have a direct and an indirect. So a direct is just anyone that's going to be directly fronting on the arterial. And then based on the category, our infrastructure funding policy dictates what the cost per front foot is. We are luckily using state funds to help buy down those costs to our property owners. So ultimately, for a single family, it would otherwise be $100 a front foot. After we buy down using state funds, it brings it to $42.50. You can see here how those other categories ultimately pay once we buy down using state funds. So likewise, also mentioned that there's indirect fronting on arterials. So that would be a property that might be, a block or two off of 7th Avenue. They're in the assessment district. Again, according to our policy, a single family residence would pay $15 per front foot. But again, we do use state funds to buy that cost down. So rather than $15, the single family property would pay nothing. And likewise for MR Tier 1 and 2. But then the larger MR properties, commercial or downtown mixed-use properties, do pay that full assessment for the indirect. So with that, we'll be here for any questions that anyone might have. Appreciate the opportunity this evening. Thank you.